Well, it seems like just minutes since I last saw you. We were talking about the major pentatonic, and now we're going to talk about the relative minor pentatonic, and more to the point of how these are interchangeable, clearly, obviously, and that'll be that way to you as well. So now to continue, let's go to the overhead camera. Now I didn't turn it on yet because I was adjusting things, so I'm going to turn the overhead camera on and then we'll get busy and go to the overview for the minor pentatonic. Oh, and yes, the blues scale. We've already talked about the relative minor and the relative major. So I'm going to get right to this. In terms of the pentatonic scale, the A minor pentatonic scale is simply going to start on A. Now I'm going to suggest first off that you take this through the 12 keys exactly like we did in the last video. Remember this extension, but now we won't be playing on the root. We'll be playing on the third of the chord if we play an A minor. So there's our root, but we're going to start here. So it actually has a minor character to it, and that's the reason you do this extension. But now if you go through the 12 keys and you start remembering this works with A minor, then you're going to really have more to say with less to do. Economy of motion, your hand being trained into a sound area, an area that can create sound on command in several different places. So that's the logic behind this approach. So here's our A minor 7, and we can play our pentatonic extension. Granted, that's C to C up here to E, and it's a little bit limited, but it still sounds good, so you can get the idea that you can really build out from there with your own ideas. Now, we're going to think about that going forward here, and that gives us thinking about your chords that we did when we talked about the relative minor, and I showed you these really cool voicings for the third and 7, and in the right hand, the A minor. So you can see here, this is where we're starting to bring everything together. So if I'm playing this voicing behind someone, and they play pentatonic, or if you do, then you're going to sound really nice. And then we can go to F, pentatonic, but on our minor. So now we're playing on the 13th of the chord, which is a great jazz note. And let's do a little quick review of theory. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And let's always remember now that 6 and 13 are the same thing on a dominant chord. So if you want to find 13 quickly, count up 6, and that's 13. So if you were on the A, count up 6, and it's 13. Or you could just use your new knowledge about relative major, relative minor, and it's that note. The relative minor to C is A, and that's the 13th of the chord. So here we are with F, and there's the 13. And then we go to G7, and we have our voicing like this, and we can use the E minor pentatonic. So we're starting to sound a little more open, but still inside. So there's those terms where you can play outside of the changes or a little more upper structure. People use that term as well. That's playing on the top parts of the chord. And then there's also playing more inside the chord tones. Quick word about theory and my approach. I believe that there are two, well, I came to see that there are two types of theory. There's analytical theory and there's player's theory. What I'm doing here with my blues videos is what I call player's theory. I'm giving you what you need to play competently and know the theory behind improvisation. Analytical theory is where you go through and you study things more in a clinical way. You study theory like the diatonic system. You study what the 1 chord, 4 chord, 5 chord is, what the functions are, voice leading, drop 2 voicings, drop 3 voicings, shell voicings, all these things that people say all over the world, and that's part of the language of music. But it's not necessary to start playing. And so it doesn't matter what I call the voicing. If I do it in a way that leaves you in the dirt, then you might as well find somebody else. So instead of using the technical terms, a lot of times I'm just using what's exactly there, calling it what it is, and then letting you have it so you can use it. Now that's what I call player's theory. I started to look at the theory and just distill it or make it more applicable so I could quickly access things and play on the fly. I was playing gigs regularly when I was very young, and I needed to be in the game. I didn't have time to learn all the theory that was ever invented. So I had to figure out how to get things organized quickly and use them in terms of scales and chords and what to do when. So you'll find that's the approach I'm using here. If we were taking lessons every week, then we would be also getting more involved in the analytical side of things, and that's exactly why I'm going to be doing other videos, is to try and include that. The last thing I'll say about that is when I have students who come to me regularly, I teach all the possible terms for theory, but I also teach player's theory. So player's theory is so the person can go out the door and start jamming or playing professionally right now with everything we talked about. Then there's Neapolitan sixths, flat 2 major 7 in the jazz world, all these different things. I teach all of the different terminologies so that no matter where you go to college in the world, you'll fit in with however they decide the language should be. I'm much looser in these videos with that, and I'm happy to admit that because the bottom line is to get you playing, because that's what happened for me. So now that we have talked about the minor pentatonic and the minor chords and how they can be superimposed or put inside of the major sounds, you'll notice we're putting minor sounds in there to get a darker color, a more sad sound, if you will, or a more somber, reflective sound. So this is where we find the blues scale comes from. The blues scale comes from minor scales. It doesn't come from the blues progression, and it doesn't come from major harmony. It comes from minor harmony, and specifically you can find it right here in this folk scale called the pentatonic scale. So we look at the A minor. Here's the A minor pentatonic scale, and all we need is an E flat, and we have the A minor blues scale. Now, that is a wonderful vehicle for an A minor chord, but because in our jazz world we have an A minor chord available to us in a dominant, then we can use the A minor blues scale and that is the logic behind these quote-unquote blue notes. So now you can play with intention rather than, oh man, that's a cool sound, and you just do it as a sound. That's great, but now you can do it intentionally. So you can have this. Now there's a really great little lick I came up with in high school so I could play fast once in a while, and I still love it. So I'm going to show that to you right here. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. Oh, notice I started on C, but it's an A minor blues scale. C, D, E flat, 1, 2, 3. Thumb, 1, 2, 3, 5. If you wanted to go 2 octaves, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You can hit your C at the top. Here's a nice example. So that would be a nice run, and you could come down. That's an A minor blues scale right there. Now for the fingering for an A minor blues scale, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. And I like adding a little extra note so I'm not trapped at my third finger. I can close this way going down. You can get these very fast, and they're fun. They sound fun, and you should be having fun. I hope you can see that. If that's too fast for you, then you write me a letter or put a comment, and I'll get this slowed down for you better. But once you get this in with your 1, 2, 3, 4, you'll do it your way, and you can go as fast as you want. But later on, I'll show you some different licks that are built out of this. Unfortunately, if we get too far into the licks, then we lose the focus of where we're trying to go. And I really want to get all of this into this one video today. So another video on licks for sure. But you'll notice that in one of the videos earlier, I was talking about triads and hitting the octave at the top and so on. And I talked about sliding. And there is where I got my idea, because it's the blue note. And it's the blue note from A minor blues, which is related to C triad. So there's an example of my relative major, relative minor interchange. And the scale is just one scale for 2 chords. And you can start on any note you want. And then when you're doing this, you have your blue note to slide. Now, this also is where I got it from the other chords. So if we go to F, you'll remember I was doing it there too. Well, if we look at F and we do our relative minor blues, there's our relative minor pentatonic, and all we need is A flat, and we have the D blues scale. And we're going to use the same fingering we used for A minor. And we could even do that lick I did there. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Here it is on F. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And there you go. When I was doing the triad things, that's where I got that blue note from. That's where I got that note. That's why I played that. So back then I was telling you, here's a cool idea, slide, but here's the logic behind it and why I saw that or heard that. And then of course our last chord in the blues is G, and the relative minor to G is E. These things we've already discussed. So that means we have an E minor pentatonic. Very clear distinction there, not E major pentatonic. That would have some sharps in it. E minor relative to G. And then we can add B flat, and we have an E minor blues scale. And it's fingered the same as D and A. And we can also do the little lick I showed you. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. F7, C. There's a nice little vehicle. This is where you hear all those things in modern jazz, smooth jazz, wherever, or pop music, whatever. This is where it comes from. Notice that was all A minor blues scale. You do it here on the F. And then on the G.